So today we're finishing up a series of Principle Oneness, 1, 2, and 3. And next month, in February, I'm calling it the Avatar series, those enlightened human beings that have connected in oneness at a different level. And every one of them has basically said, you and I can do it also. And when I study other religions around the world, one of the things I bring to it is I want to see what's similar, not what is different. And so we're going to take a look at what's similar through all of the history and this consciousness evolution that brings us today to 2020. And then, as I said, we'll jump into quantum physics, and that'll give us both, I think, the golden thread to how we got here, and also where we're headed and what science is now proving. Science is catching up to what was taught thousands of years ago. And this whole study for me has led to the saying I say, and you've heard me say it many times, one truth, many voices. And I think as we begin to, why is that important? It's important, at least to me, is because it gives us confidence that we can see, no matter what religion, what culture, or what time, there was these teachings that certain people taught that made a difference. And that's what I'm looking for, and I hope that you are. So in February, we're going to look, and I'm calling it, what would Shankara say? What would Lao Tzu say? What would Buddha say? And what would Krishna say? So we're taking four very highly illuminated, awakened beings and digging into what their truths were and matching them up not only with what we've been studying this last month, but other things that we've learned in the unity principles. So principle number one, we started a couple weeks ago, was one with God, one with our source, one with whatever name that is for you, because words are only signposts. It's about the experience. So we don't get hung up on whether it's Brahman or the Tao or God or spirit or source or the divine. Whatever works for you, use that. But it's the experience of oneness with that creative principle of the universe. I use this quote in all three times because it's so important. Are we spiritual beings having this experience, or are we human beings having a spiritual experience? And we're both. You ever figure that out this last couple of weeks? It can be a moment where we're very spiritual, we're in our spiritual consciousness, and all of a sudden, just like that, wow. It's like, wow, I really was human in that moment, was I not? And that seems to be what the journey is, at least for me. I've said this over and over again. I would have loved to have what happened to Saul and became Paul in an instant with a zap by lightning. But I don't see that happening around me, and it didn't happen in my journey. It's been one or two steps forward, one or two steps back, and it's like, well, here I am again, going around that mountain again. I thought I took care of that. And that seems to be the process that we're all in this journey, going from being in the human consciousness to the spiritual consciousness, God consciousness, and back. This was key to the very beginning. I and the Father are one. Where's the I? The I of the I am is in you and me. Jesus said that over and over and over again. Don't get confused about how people are using these words. Know that it's about you. It's the God consciousness within you. And we're going to see this same teaching been taught many, many years before even Jesus. It was called many different names. It can be called the I am. It can be called the Christ. It can be called Atman, Buddha nature, Buddha mind, the Tao. It doesn't matter, again, what the words are, but it's what's inside of you of the divine that you and I get to live from as we move into spiritual consciousness versus the human consciousness. I love this slide because it says it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it the divine, you can call it God, you can call it the quantum force, quantum field. But the key is that it's high frequency energy. When we use that energy vortex all the time, we start at the bottom when we're born, do we not? We're born into this planet of lessons, and we are socialized. We've studied that from the science. By the time we're 7 or 8, most of our beliefs are in our subconscious anyway. And those beliefs are all about a belief in two powers, duality. Most religions are good and bad. If you're a good boy or girl, you get blessed. If not, you'll have to wait till you die and go to heaven, then you'll get blessed even more. All of those are teachings in two powers. And we learn through awakening how to move up in the energy quartet into higher frequencies. God consciousness is not a choice. I said this last week, it's a state. I love this. Why is this important? Because I can be right in the middle of realizing I'm in my human stuff and make a choice. And it's always available, this state of God consciousness, or I am presence, or the Christ. It's always available for you and I to make a choice and say, I'm going to move up. I'm going to move or in to the divine that's within each and every one who's been born on this planet. It gets built into us. It's part of the process. I don't know how it happens, but it must happen sometime in the womb because we all have it. The choice is, do we want to live from it, or do we want to live from, continue what the habits are of the human? Number 2 last week was becoming one within ourselves. So we have oneness with the Creator, oneness with Source, and now oneness within ourselves. This one we don't like. We really don't like this teaching. Why? Because of this. To get here, we have to die daily. And you say, what do you mean, die daily? My body, I'm not going to kill my body or my mind. This is how I see it. It's the little I with a dot. My ego, my human consciousness, I have to release that. I have to let it die daily. And that's a conscious activity that you and I have to do. It will not do it on its own. Because the number one rule of all human beings, being human, is self-preservation. And we're being called in the spiritual journey to get rid of that. I have to get rid of Dan, the little I with a dot. To be able to open up to this God consciousness, the Christ, or the I am that's within you and I. But it cannot come where this is. I wish. It'd make it a lot easier. But this is when I say the teachings that we're going to see, and we're going to see it through all the avatars we're talking about, this is a very common theme. It was taught time and time again by all the awakened ones who realized that you had to do this. Or if not, you would stay in human consciousness and live there. Continue in the human patterns, whatever they might be for you. And living in a world of duality where health and sickness is true for you, or happiness and sadness, or abundance and lack. That's what we're taught. That's what we come into in this planet. As we move up the vortex, we talked about this last week, we get to the place. This is radical teaching here. Take no thought for your life. How many of you spent all week taking no thought for your life? I have to put my hand in. Yeah, this is not easy stuff. And you can't just jump into this and say, okay, I take no thought for my life. That's not what he's teaching here. He's teaching as you move up the vortex of the energy and the frequency, and more of the little I is being replaced, you get to a place that you don't have to spend time anymore. And look what else it says here. Sorry, Jacqueline. He talks about clothes, too. Take no thought. I'm going to pay for that one. Take no thought for your life. Take no thought for your clothes, what you put on your body. No thought for what you eat or what you drink. This is radical teaching. But we can't just jump into this. We have to grow into it as our consciousness grows to a place where we can live from there. Take no thought. Take no thought for your life. And you can see why over thousands and thousands of years. There's only a few avatars that I'm going to talk about in February. Because this is the teaching that gets us there. But what I love about what the Master Teacher said, you can do all of this and more. All of us can. He never said it was only about me. He never set himself up as an exception that said, I was the only Son of God. He never said that. He said, I myself can do nothing. The Father within does the work. And you and me can do exactly what he did if we choose. But we have to follow this. Number one is I die daily. Our egos will fight that and fight it. I know because I live it too. We all do. To getting to the place where we can surrender the little I with the dot. And look what else he said. I love this. He said, look at the birds and the lilies in the field. They're not running around like chickens without their heads. They're just breathing, being still, taking no thought, being the perfect lily and the perfect bird, the perfect oak tree, the perfect fern, the perfect mosquito. Take no thought and allow this life force to live through you into a place of my love, my peace, my joy, my kingdom within. So what happens here is this. It's no longer Dan's body, Dan's mind, Dan's soul. It's no longer mine. It's God's mind, one soul, one body, living through me. I'm a vessel for that life force. And then I can begin to take no thought when that begins to flow. So we go to principle of oneness number 3. One with all people and all living things. One with the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. One, not destroy it. One. And what I love about this and these 3 levels of principle of oneness, if you go back to the teachings that Jesus gave and said, this overshadows, this is version 2.0 over the 10 Commandments, is we're 2, right? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And love others as you love yourself. So for me, when I kept asking, how do I do this? How do I love myself at the level that I can love others? This being connected in oneness is the love that I now understand is a process that I can begin to do that. But I can only love others. What comes first? Love of self. And somehow in the teaching of this, we got it cattywampus. It was like, well, you got to run around and love everybody. It's like, no, I wanted to knock them into next Tuesday. There's something wrong here. But I can't love someone until I first love myself at that level and connected with Source or God or whatever word that you want to use there. But as we connect with that oneness and let the oneness within ourselves, out of that we begin to have that love and oneness for everything else. So where did this come from? The Master Teacher said this, do not call anyone on the earth your father, for one is your Father, and he lives in heaven. Where's the Father within you? Right? Call no one your father in the earth. No one your father in the physical. It's very interesting because my dad taught me not to do this. He said, I'm not your father. You only have one father. I'm Dad. And he made that distinction early in my life, and I never appreciated what he said. To me, it was kind of stupid at the time. It's like, well, everybody else calls her Dad, Father. But he was trying to teach this to me early on, and I get it now, and I appreciate it. But call no human being is your father. You have one Father, and that Father's in heaven. Where's heaven? Kingdom of heaven is within you and me. And because we have the same Father within, we are all one. Now, this teaching is again radical, because it means you and I have to drop every bias and bigotry and racism and things about other religions and other people and other cultures. There can be none of that, because we're one family with one Father. Is that source within each and every one of us. The oneness of all existence represents the heart of spirituality. One with source, one within ourselves, and one with all living things. And this is the evolution of consciousness that we're seeing all over the planet today. And it doesn't matter, it's coming out of Catholicism, it's coming out of the Jewish faith, it's coming out of atheists. More and more people are understanding that if we do not get here, we will not survive on the planet. And the only way I believe we are beyond human fix. Do you believe? It can only happen, something divine will begin to happen, and it's in the consciousness of all of us where we begin to get connected at all three levels with oneness and begin to see all other people from that place. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about how we compartmentalize. I know no one here but me has done that in their lives. But he says when we compartmentalize, we miss it completely. This oneness. When we see one, we see the truth. And we begin to see others as we are. Same Father within. Same Spirit within. Same Christ within, the Tao, whatever words you want to put to it. We're going to see in February that these four enlightened human beings that evolved the consciousness on the planet, all connected with this. The oneness of all begins to change your life, because it begins to take that compartmentalization and make you whole. You cannot be whole when you continue to compartmentalize. Wholeness, oneness, same words. Eckhart Tolle said this: love is the recognition of oneness in the world of duality. True love, divine love, unconditional love only occurs when we let go of duality, when we let go better than, good, bad, healthy or not healthy. Only then are we in a love that is this common theme that runs through the Creator into each and every one of us as we open to that. We are one. All people, 7.5 billion on the planet, you and I are one. We have with the same Father, the same Spirit. With the animal kingdom, with the plant kingdom, and with the mineral kingdom. And when we begin to open our consciousness to that possibility, is when we become the true light in the world. And that's when we begin to see changes at the grassroots level. It has to happen in consciousness before it will manifest into the world. So when commandment number 2 the Master gave us of loving others as we love ourselves, this is an act of true freedom. What do I mean by that? Who holds you or me in bondage? We do. We hold ourselves. Whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bondage. And the only way we can be free is if we free everyone else. Otherwise, if there is this group over here that I don't like, you're not free. They are. They're going on with their lives. But you're not free. And freedom can only come as we begin to live out these 2 commandments. Number 1, love source. Number 2, love others as we love ourselves. Okay, this is the part everybody wants to skip of the Master Teacher's teachings. And this is the part that has not been taught. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. and pray for those who persecute you. In the last 10 years, how many Christian churches have you seen hold prayer meetings for terrorists? In World War II, how many prayed for the Germans? This is radical teaching. But it says that you have to release that entanglement, those unforgiven acts that you have towards anyone and anything, or you yourself cannot be free. I didn't say this is easy teaching. I said it's radical teaching. And to live it, it takes a radical change in the way you see the little I and the great big I, bold italicized. So Peter was kind of thumping his chest one day with Jesus and said, well, you know what? I'm going to forgive my brother 7 times. And he thought he was going to get a pat on the head and a gold star for being very spiritual. And the master teacher said, no, there's two versions of interpretation. One says 70 times 7. The other one says 77 times. It really doesn't matter. Because 7 is symbolized in the Bible, is the metaphysical meaning of that, is physical completion. So what he was teaching here was you keep forgiving until you're finished, however long that takes. And what does he mean by being finished? It means when you loose that person, let them go, then you are free. Again, radical teaching. There's many times in my life, and I'm sure in yours, that I didn't want to forgive those people. It was much easier to get all stewed up in my stuff. Point the finger. Look what they're doing. It's not fair. 70 times 7. Until we're finished with it. Unconditional love is forgiving. It's giving love for whatever happened. And only when we give that love for do we receive it back. Now, I didn't have a slide for this, but there's a teaching where the master teacher says, don't ever meditate or pray if you're holding a charge against another human being or another thing. He said, pick your stuff up, walk away, and take care of it, and then come back. So if you're holding and I'm holding a charge about another person or another thing, I call it entanglement. You know what I mean by that? You're entangled in that person in your mind. You're entangled in that person in your emotions. And until we let go of that, until we forgive that, we don't go free. And we are not in oneness, and we are not in all the blessings and the promises when we are dwelling in the secret place of the Almighty. I never knew how strong I was until I had to forgive someone who wasn't sorry and accept an apology I never received. We've all lived this. We've all experienced it. And it doesn't matter because we still have to do it. It's ours to do. And until we do, we are entangled in that. And we cannot walk free. And we cannot receive the blessings of oneness. Now, there's a teaching in Mark that I wanted to talk about because it's been cattywampus twisted a little bit. It says, if you don't forgive, then your sins aren't forgiven by the Father in heaven. Where's the Father in heaven? Here. So when you understand this teaching from that place is if I don't forgive Jeff, I am not forgiven from the I am or the divine within me. I hold that charge against me. That's why I'm not forgiven. Not some super Santa Claus God up in the sky in a little black book holding a chip against me. No, that's not what this teaching is at all. You and I hold it within ourselves, and that's why we're unforgiven. And who has control to change it in an instant? Because it's not a choice, it's a state. And we can immediately do the work and move back into that state of spiritual oneness. Forgiveness is not about freeing the other person, it's about freeing you. And that's true at both levels of forgiveness. Forgiveness for anyone else, but forgiveness for yourself. It's the one we miss the most. We stay entangled in charges against us of only I shoulda, woulda, we should all over ourselves. We have to release those and forgiveness of ourselves so that we can walk free in the light. Choose to carry the harmony of oneness with you in all areas of your life. Choose it. So this was kind of what I've been given that's helped me in this oneness. And as I say, any process, because I'm a process kind of person. I'm always asking God, give me a process. I got to figure out how to do this, because words don't work for me. I want to feel it. I want to see it happen. And this is what, and again, as I always say, if it works for you, pick it up. If not, sit it down. But I call this the beholder or the witness. What I'm doing there is getting the little I with a dot, me, out of this process. So I go 6 inches up, 6 back, and I want to observe. And you can use whatever it is, but that for me is how I begin to die daily, of the little I with a dot. Get out of the way so source can move. And I identify that with the capital or big I, italics, bold. It's the I of the I am for me, not this I. This is where we get so confused. Because if you read the New Testament, you read the red words of Jesus, he uses I both ways. He uses the I for the divine, the source, for God. He also uses the I to mean him, the man. So we have to have spiritual discernment as we read to be able to understand which one is which. But this big I for me, and then I let it come down through and take over and melt into, replace the little I with the dot. My ego, my human consciousness. And then, as I said last week, I let it merge in my being and go out and fill my energy field, fill my aura, fill whatever you want to call that, so that there is a oneness within me, not Dan's brain, not Dan's mind, not Dan's body, God's, the big I, God consciousness. One mind, one body, one soul. So now, what do we do with it now? We're going to send it out. So once I've gone through step 1 and step 2, now I let it go to the world. And I like to include all the kingdoms. Mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and all humans. 7.5 billion, that's a lot of big eyes. But if you sit there and let that happen, you can actually feel the energy flow from you. And it's a way to love and bless everyone. Oneness with all. This week I was taught an addition to this process, and it was about forgiveness. Because what I was seeing when I would see people is I'd see the big I, the capital I, italics I above their head. And what I was told is, Dan, you're still judging by appearances. You're still judging what you see in the human. Forgiveness means you see the truth. And the truth is that this God consciousness lies within everyone. And as I began to let it come into their heart space, I felt a level of forgiveness I've never felt before. And this is how I ended it. I forgive you, I love and bless you, and I send you on to your highest and best good. I felt the freeing of these entanglements. And so it's another process. Try it if it works for you, if not. My go-to up to now has been the whole Ho'oponopono. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. But all of a sudden this took on a whole other meaning for me. I don't know whether it's just because I was in the midst of this series or not. But it was a way that I could watch the entanglements go away. And I could just see them in the light, the brilliant Christ light, which is within each and every one of us. So the Trinity of oneness, one with divine source, one within ourselves, and one with all people and all living things. So what is the promise for you and I if we live here? If we choose to be a spiritual being living in oneness What's the promise for that? God's grace. An unending river. The river of life that flows through you and I when we open up to it. And I call it this. If you remember back to the white stone service, remember what it says? Basically, when you're in oneness, you will have secret manna. You will have Spirit come to you every day. It's a daily kind of thing. Because we were taught early on in the Hebrews march through the desert, you can't spend yesterday's manna today. It's rancid. It's spoiled. It has to come every day as fresh Spirit. But the promise is if we live in oneness, we live in this thing called grace. It's one of the reasons why I use grace, ease, and light for 2020 for us. Living in grace is the greatest thing that can ever happen to any of us. I love this quote, and this came from a pretty fundamental church. God's grace is not just some churchy thing. It's power. It lives within you and I. And as we begin to live in the God's grace, we become and look in our lives more and more like the Master Teacher. It's the promise. And if we do our work and get connected and release and die daily and surrender that ego, we open up to the God consciousness and our lives get transformed. This is in, I think, 1 Corinthians. Because of God, I am what I am. The grace of God is because I am what I am. Thich Nhat Hanh said this, the heart of the matter is always our oneness with the divine Spirit and our union, our unity, our oneness with all life. That's the heart of the matter. I don't know about you, but that's why I come to Unity Harrisburg, to live this truth and to see my consciousness go ever up more in light and learning how to forgive at levels I never did before and learning how to let go and let little I with the dot die each day at another level. Let's go to stillness. As Kate prepares, let's just take a couple deep breaths. And I welcome you, if it works for you, to release your little I with a dot in whatever way works. Release your human consciousness, release your ego, release the persona, the mask, and let the big I, capital I, italics, bold. Come down into the heart space. It's a yes to life with a capital L, a yes to love with a capital L, a yes to joy with a capital J, and a yes to peace with a capital P. And now let that, all of that energy just expand within you, out into your energy bodies, typically out to your fingertips when they're spread, above your head, below your feet. One. A oneness with the divine. A oneness with the source that created you and I. It's fulfillment. It's perfection. It's heaven on earth. Here and now. Now let your energy begin to go out in a love and blessing. And I'm going to ask you to pick someone that you're entangled with. Someone who's unforgiven. Or it may be yourself. See that person in your mind's eye. In whatever way is comfortable for you, send love and blessings. Whether it's wrap your arms around their neck or just hold them, look deep into their eyes to see their soul. Say, I forgive you. I'm sorry, I forgive you. I love you. And in that spirit of love, bless them, free them. I loose you, I free you. You're free to go on to your highest and best good. That's what I want for you because it's what I want for me. And see them full of light and love and free. And see yourself full of love and light and free. And in this moment, feel God's grace, the river that flows through you. And so it is.